Hey everybody, welcome back to The Car Guy on PeoriaLife.com. My name is Greg McCoy. I'm here with Brett Beachler. How you doing, Brett?
Good morning, Greg. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Been a while. That's good, though.
Yeah, so once again, before we get started, I want to once again remind everybody that if you have questions about your vehicle, about your car, about your truck, you can, there are several ways to submit those to Brett. You can either go to Facebook, find him on Facebook, or you can go to the Beachler website. Is that just beachlers.com?
Beachlers.com. Super simple.
Okay.
Just like a sand beach, B-E-A.
Hey, on the beach
On the beach.
with Beachlers.
With Beachlers.
Yeah. Or if you're in Peoria, you can stop by in person, right? To the Beachlers Vehicle Care and Repair Center at the corner of War Memorial and University.
That is correct.
And talk to Brett in the flesh.
In the flesh.
You might even get an autograph.
And a book.
And a book.
To go with it, possibly. If you're nice. No, I'm just kidding.
Are they on sale?
They're on sale. Very inexpensive car care books. And I've never heard anybody come back and say, you know what, that wasn't worth my time. It's always been a benefit to people, and it's packed full of information. And actually, I just reordered a ton more copies because we ran out. So
Great.
it's good.
Good. You can do a second edition, add in more stuff and so forth?
Possibly, if I ever get a little more time on my calendar, maybe. So we're working on that.
All right. Well, what are we going to talk about today?
We are going to talk about the exciting world of saving fuel. Now, I know this day and age with gas prices around $2 a gallon, nobody's overly concerned with it, but pennies add up to dollars and then some. So I always try to encourage people when it comes to this arena, and I know it sounds kind of anticlimactic because we sell fuel, so my interest is obviously selling as much fuel as possible. But I truly believe we're in the business to help people reduce overall operating expenses so they can have a little more vicarious life and be able to give to other things and children and charities and things of that nature. So I'm not interested in maximizing dollars in vehicles because I think it's more important because I try to think like other people want to be taught.
You mentioned that fuel prices are low right now, so people aren't so concerned about it. Do you notice when you think back over the last 10, 15, 20 years, do you notice when gas is at $4 a gallon or $3 a gallon or $2 a gallon, is there a difference in the total volume that you do?
The volume actually over the past few years, even with the fuel prices going down, the volume has actually decreased.
Really?
Even with the decrease in the fuel cost. Overall, we keep our eye on the industry pretty closely, but overall, fuel consumption has gone down. Cars are becoming more economical. People are getting a little more intelligent about their driving.
That's a shock.
The younger generation really is, the numbers are there to support it. They're not overly interested in driving vehicles. I mean, there's a number of kids that wait until 17, 18, 19 years old to even drive a vehicle. They have the technologies at their fingertips, and they can see their friends through their phones, and they don't necessarily need to go see them all the time and convene with them. So that's not an anecdotal, that's truth. I mean, that's truly what's going on in the background with a lot of these cars, or the driving habits. So, but my big thing is, on this whole topic is how to save fuel mileage on your vehicle. There's very small, tiny tips that you can do, and we'll start off with the first one. Stay on top of your maintenance. I know it sounds cliched, but believe it or not, oil, for one, it actually becomes thicker. It's very hard to measure this, but it becomes thicker as it grows in age. So with that thickness comes a slight decrease in fuel economy on vehicles. That's why you see a lot of these vehicles that are going to an oil viscosity called a 5W20 and a 0W20. The whole purpose of that is to increase fuel mileage.
So that is a less viscous? I mean, it's a thinner kind of thing?
That's the whole purpose of it, and that's the manufacturers are squeezing everything they can out of all aspects of the vehicle to increase fuel mileage because the government is mandating these CAFE standards. So, don't let your oil go too far. We've also talked many times about the overzealousy in our industry that goes on with 3,000-mile oil changes. And actually, interesting topic came up last week in one of our share groups. California is looking to mandate, which I'm not a huge fan of California, but they're looking to mandate that companies cannot sell 3,000-mile oil changes anymore.
Really?
Yeah, that's how important it is because of the finite resources that go on with the oil. It's interesting. They're pushing this bill through, so companies don't do that. So I've been pushing this for years that it is absolute overkill to change your oil every 3,000 miles unless you're going out racing the engine every day and, more hard climates than we're in. But for the most part, 5,000 miles is what we're seeing, 6,000 miles, 7,000 miles on oil changes. So anyway, back to my point, oil does become thicker as it gets older, so that robs a little bit of energy. The next one, synthetics can actually help you because it reduces that wear on oil. You won't necessarily see it in the measurement unless you're a stickler that measures every tank that goes in your fuel. But essentially, synthetic oils will extend out that oil change interval. And then so it takes longer to become thicker. Does that make sense? With the synthetic oil. So usually, and you and I have talked about this before, usually synthetics are about the same cost per mile as conventional oil. So something to consider for some people. It's not for everybody. I've got a number of customers that don't drive 10,000 miles in a year, so it's not worth their money because synthetic oil you have to change every 10,000 miles or 12 months, whichever comes first. So if you're driving 5,000 miles a year, it doesn't necessarily make sense to do it that way. It is a little better for the engine, but engines typically don't know better. So next one, replace spark plugs when you're directed inside your owner's manual. Most spark plugs anymore, we're seeing 100,000 miles, but we also see people push them to 120, 130,000 miles, and that can reduce your fuel economy on spark plugs that become more and more worn. So check your owner's manual for that. Brake inspection. I know most people don't talk about this, but we see a large number of brake calipers and brake caliper slides that become sticky or they don't operate. So imagine going down the road with your bicycle brake system and you've got your brake half engaged. Okay, what's that going to do?
Put a lot of stress on you.
It's going to put a lot of stress on you. The same thing happens in cars. Anybody can do an inspection of brake pads and their thickness, but it truly takes an ASE technician to properly inspect brakes to make sure they've got a caliper that works in all four positions of your brakes. So my techs, when they do what we call the service package 3 or the comprehensive inspection, will actually go around and test each of the four wheel positions to make sure they've got a completely free brake caliper. And in an oil change operation, people don't necessarily check that, and they don't necessarily have the skill level to do that. So your owner's manual states to do it every 15,000. Most of them do to have this kind of inspection done. We say 15 to 20, somewhere in there is sufficient. So always a good idea to get the doctor's eyes of the vehicle on it and inspecting items like this. It will affect your fuel mileage. I can rest assured it will affect your fuel mileage. I've seen it done.
What about parking brakes? Now that's is that a separate braking system?
Yes, it's generally a separate braking system. Many of them are built into the rear brakes themselves, so there's actually a separate housing inside of the rear brakes. But that can cause a problem, but you don't see a large number of people using their parking brake anymore. They just don't engage, and with them not being exercised like that all the time, they can malfunction down the road. So I think it's a good idea to use your parking brake every once in a while to keep those cables exercised.
Keep it going.
Yep, exactly. So next one, air filter having clean flow. I know we've talked about this. The true test of whether or not an air filter fails is putting a fluorescent light behind the air filter. If you cannot see light, it's time to change your air filter. Unless you have a bunch of large debris in there where a critter has made a nest, it's really not necessary to change air filters, but it can affect your fuel mileage ever so slightly if you've got a restricted air filter. So air filters. This is a huge one. Tires inflated to proper specifications. So most everybody's proper specifications are inside the door jamb of the driver's door. You look at it, there's a front and a rear pressure. You want to keep your tires at that. I can't tell you how many times we have people that come in and they look at the sidewall of the tire, and the sidewall says 44 pounds, and they put 44 pounds in it. And the placard on the door jamb says 35 pounds. That's for maximum fuel mileage, proper tire wear, and correct ride in the car. That's the main reasons they set those pressures. So check the placard. If you can't find it, stop by. We can help you find it. It's not a big deal. It's kind of mixed in with a bunch of different numbers, but it's pretty specific in terms of where the air pressures are.
Now, how often do you recommend people check their air pressure?
Once a month. You're technically supposed to check them every time you get fuel, just like you're supposed to check your fluid levels in your oil. Nobody does that anymore. Nobody does that anymore.
I've done it a few times, and people look at me like, "What's that guy doing? Has he got problems?"
Mm-hmm. And that's funny you say that, because that's what a lot of people think. Oh, he must have a tire that keeps going flat. No, you're actually supposed to check your air pressure.
And is it true that a tire, even if it's in perfect shape, perfectly installed, perfect everything, will still lose pressure over time?
Yes, a tire can naturally lose up to 1 pound of pressure per month. So I've seen tires not lose a pound in between oil changes, and I've seen them lose 3 or 4, and customers have instructed us to check for leaks. No leaks. It's just a natural loss. So,
but most cars these days, newer cars, have the oil pressure or air pressure indicator. So if you get too low, it's going to tell you.
Yeah, tire pressure monitors are mandated on vehicles since 2010 or 11, or could be 9. I'm not sure the specifics, but yeah, they're mandated, and it should tell you if all 4 sensors are working properly. There's a chip inside there with a battery, and they wear out over time. But
one final question on that: what kind of air pressure monitor do you recommend? I've got the old style with the thing that comes out, the slide that comes out. Is it okay, or do you
absolutely
prefer
okay? We have both. We have digital, and we've got the whatever you call them, stick slides. I would avoid using a truck tire pressure monitor because it's not quite as accurate. It measures up to 120 or 140 pounds. Not necessary. Get the one that measures 55 pounds. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the tire pressures, you can save up to 1 to 2 miles per gallon. Doesn't seem like much, but over time, over a year, you can save more than a lunch, cost of a lunch. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. Another one: remove unnecessary weight from your vehicle. We see this often. Up to 100 pounds can cause, I think, up to 1% fuel mileage loss. So again, not a big deal, but all this adds up, and you can't believe how many customers that come in that have an enormous amount of weight in their trunk, and I'm like, "Hey, do you use this?" No. I said, "Well, go ahead and remove it because it'll help your wallet." The biggest factor: driving style and how you drive the vehicle. That's like I always tell people. It's my standard line. How fast you want to brake it, accelerate it, and turn the car is how long it's going to last, and how well your fuel mileage and how well your tire is going to last, period. So if you want to drive really aggressively, it's going to cost you more money, especially in the fuel arena. Mm-hmm. Up to 2 to 3 miles a gallon, at least. I think you can lose more. But everything I researched, they said 2 to 3 miles a gallon. So
the difference between driving 65 and 75 is significant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not just a 8% fuel mileage loss. It's more like a 14 or 18%. But yeah, it's like a statistical bell curve. As you go up higher, the fuel mileage increases exponentially. Or fuel mileage decreases. One that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it does, alignment. It's not in your owner's manual, but 30 to 50,000 miles is generally what we recommend. Reduces rolling resistance. It's like having a shoe out of alignment, and it prematurely wears a shoe, and it takes more effort and a whole ball of wax. If you got a caster or camber or a toe-in problem on your alignment, the tire is going to do what they call scrub going down the road, ever so slightly, but it makes that engine work a little bit harder to push that scrub down the road. Mm-hmm. So check your alignment. Mm-hmm. Not very expensive. Windows in the up position when traveling. That's more economical than having the windows down, the AC off. ACs do not draw much on the engine anymore. It used to be they drew quite a bit of horsepower from the engine, but they don't. Yeah, they don't anymore.
I read a little thing about that the other day, that when you're driving, you should have them up.
Yes.
But when you're stuck in a traffic jam and it's 95 degrees out, you should have them down, turn the air conditioning off.
If you want to do that, go right ahead, Greg.
Speaking of fuel mileage.
Yes. Speaking of fuel mileage, yes, you're correct. I'm not sure how many people are going to buy into that, but hey, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. Okay, last but not least, secure the fuel cap. This is an interesting stat. 17% of the cars on the road do not have the cap secured properly, about 1 in 8.
Really?
That can cost our country up to 147 million gallons of fuel through vaporization. Mm-hmm. So some interesting tips, not a huge amount, but this kind of stuff may save you $200-$300 over the year. To me, I think it's significant for most people, but some people it doesn't mean anything. So just a few of my tips for helping save fuel.
Saves money, but actually, when you your last point here, when you multiply that times 100 million drivers for the year, if you're concerned about the earth and saving
Right.
saving oil
Right.
overall, it adds up.
It's a finite resource. Everybody needs to remember that. So
That's right. All right. Well, it looks like we have reached the end of this show for this time. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Brett, for your thoughts.
You're welcome.
Beneficial as always. So again, this has been the Car Guy on PRALife.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.